We want to thank all of our parents, our parent coordinators, our principals, and many other community members who are here, the engagement hour. And we've been starting these sessions in the beginning of July. So this is actually our second month into our family engagement sessions, but we've really promoted this one because it follows the citywide event that the Chancellor had last night. And we will have 2 sessions today, and Monday will be our encore Monday night prior to our CEC meeting. So what we've done for you is we've laid out some of our wide policies and district-wide policies that we're going to share with you today. All of the information that we share today is as of now. As you know, information has been changing. There are weekly press conferences, updates from the mayor and the chancellor. And as that guidance changes, we ask you to please stay tuned to the New York City Department of Education website and also our website that we've shared with you so that you can stay current on the information. Also, your best resource is, as you know, your school's parent coordinator and your principal, because they have school-specific information about your school. So I am the superintendent of District 27. I am Jennifer Carrion Ambert, and I'm here today with my team. And we've also invited our central guests. So we're going to welcome them. We're also going to hear from them. So they will engage in just a brief update from a citywide lens. Our team is also going to provide some updates from a more local level and also address some questions that you shared with us around learning. A lot of the questions that we have today are from these various forums, our weekly office hours, our District 27 mailbox. We also recently had a parent leader forum that was hosted by our President's Council. Thank you very much for hosting that session last week. And so we've also taken questions from the chat and that event and added them to our questions tracker. And we also received questions from our CEC, and we've also added those questions. Again, the information changes. So we know that it's been a time that has been anxiety-ridden. We know that you have been tremendously patient and flexible as parents. I'm a parent myself. I have 2 older children, and my daughter is also in the same process as your children are in selecting what would be best for her as a 16-year-old junior, deciding on whether she's going to go hybrid or fully remote. So these are things that we have. And again, there's so much uncertain right now with the world. So we want to do our best to allay your fears, but we also want to be transparent with you with the information that we have. And this is a snapshot of our District 27 superintendent team, and you'll be hearing from us after our central guests. To start with an update from Mr. Mark Rampersant, who again is the Senior Executive Director from the Office of Safety and Youth Development.
Superintendent, good morning, parents, principals, and other educators that have joined, as well as our partners at Central. One of the things that I want to preface before presenting to you this morning is to simply say that we are in seriously unprecedented times. We are a school system that is responsible for 1,100,000 plus students, and we are dedicated to ensuring the safety and security of every staff member and every student in our system. We are working aggressively. We are working tirelessly to ensure that schools are ready to receive our students and staff come this fall. We are working with external agency partners such as the Department of Health, the Division of School Safety, as well other partners to ensure that our schools are ready to receive our students, our teachers, educators, as well our parents on basis. So my job here this morning is really to talk to you from the standpoint of safety and security, and to talk to you about what other provisions will be made to ensure safety and security in schools. As it relates to safety and security, the school safety agent in many schools is the first point of contact that our students will have with an adult. And we want to make sure that that adult is a caring adult. So one of the things that we are offering this year is our school safety agents, at least from the supervisory standpoint, level 3, which is the first level of supervision, will take part in a Crisis 101 training. This Crisis 101 training is going to prepare them to seek crisis. And it's not necessarily the action of acting out. It is our students who are walking in the building with their heads down, students who may refuse to wear a mask, or a student who act out as a result of the loss of a family member. Primary responsibility is going to be support and not enforcement. And that is the focus from the door. Each school is going to be required to work with their building response team to identify the appropriate staff members who will supervise morning entry, student transition, the use of common space, isolation room, and dismissal. Some of those are the topics that I will briefly talk about this morning. As well, it is very important that parents understand that every one of our New York City public schools is responsible for having an active building response team. An active building response team. One of the asks of our principals this year, and we're going to do that by way of our borough safety directors, of which there are 10 of. Each supports 200 some odd schools around the city. And we're reaching directly to their principals to ask that principals assess their current staffing to ensure that they have a fully functional BRT returning to school this year. If we find that there are members of the building response team who have requested accommodations, we are apprising the principals of the importance of filling those roles. Some of those roles range from, well, before going into the roles, there are 6 members of the building response team, 6 members. And while the custodian, the nurse, and the school safety agents are a part of the building response team, you will not see their specific roles outlined in the building response team titles. And that is because they are considered subject matter experts. A nurse can only do what a nurse does. Custodian can only do what a custodian does. And the school safety agent's role is clear and specific. All of the other members, such as the special needs coordinator, the incident assessor, the special officer, the recorder, and the BRT leader, those roles could be deployed to any staff member as long as it's the right staff member that is willing and able to perform those functions. We provide, based on state law, an annual training to all employees, including school-based staff, before the 15th of September. And the focus is on ensuring that every staff member is equipped with the tools necessary in the event of an actual emergency. We are, in our training this year, there will be an extra emphasis on responding to COVID-like symptoms. So a student who is displaying COVID-like symptoms, and if you have been monitoring some of what the DOH has been posting as it relates to information, that list can be pretty long, from diarrhea to sneezing, coughing, to a fever. And so any young person who's exhibiting any of those COVID-like symptoms will be taken to an isolation room away from other students while continuing to be in PPE compliance. And a school nurse will assess the student to determine whether or not we need EMS or parent just to pick the child up, and that depends on the child's symptoms. The members of the BRT, their roles are specific. I mentioned earlier that one of the roles is a special needs coordinator. Well, in this case, this student becomes a special needs student, right? Special needs in the sense that the student is sick and can't sort of act on his own and needs support. Our assembly point coordinator will stand outside of the door because we're removing the student from one space to another. The responsibility of the person manning the isolation room is simply to keep the young person comfortable until the parent arrives to pick them up. The school will do outreach to the parent. We are working in close contact with our partners in DOH to apprise them of every case where we had a young person sick. And we will, in every case, recommend to the parent that when they take the child from the school, that they get the child tested. You a brief overview of the expectations of the staff in a case where a student goes to the isolation room, just so you'll have a sense of us removing the student from the classroom into the isolation room, and then eventually the parent will come, the child will be taken to the parent will not be allowed to move about the school building. Our school safety agents will continue to do access control. We will send in advance to parents what all of the expectations are in our schools as it relates to safety and health in advance. We will do something in the Department of Education that we've never done before, and we're going to overly communicate. We are working centrally to identify a command post that is going to be centrally located, where all information will funnel into that command post, and then information back out to schools and then to families. We want to over communicate so that we avoid opportunities of rumors. A classroom of 10 students, one student gets sick, young person goes home and says to mom, a kid in my classroom had COVID. No, a kid in your classroom had a cough or a fever, right? And so what happens with parents is, principal, why didn't you tell me that you had a child with a COVID case? We're trying to avoid every opportunity of that happening. So we are going to work aggressively utilizing our BRT and our internal and external resources to get timely information to parents so that we can avoid those opportunities for principals. Within the next 2 weeks, we are conducting a citywide training for all 13,000 of our building response team members. Will be offered to all members. As I indicated earlier in my presentation, that we are obligated by state law to train all of our school staff and non-school-based staff by the 15th of every month in general response protocols. School staff will receive their training upon returning to school. We are working with the Office of School Wellness. Lessons are being prepared for teachers to turnkey to students. And some of those lessons will include the importance of wearing a mask and why, hand washing, physical distancing, if you're sick, stay home and why you should stay home, and last but not least, what COVID is and how it has affected our community thus far. These will be grade appropriate lessons sent to teachers. Teachers will be trained by school staff, and then the decks will be available to each teacher to pull down and then proceed forward.
Thank you, Mark. We do have some questions in the chat. The first safety question that we received is from Maribel McDaniel, the president of our President's Council. And she wants to know, why isn't all training done before the first day of school? And I guess that's in regards to school safety agents.
Thank you very much, Maribel, and that is a great question. Others have actually had the same question, and the answer to that is we are doing trainings prior to the start of the first day. The problem is many of our teachers are 10-month employees, right? If not all, 10-month employees that are not working during the course of the summer. We are working aggressively with our UFT, NCSA, and DC 37 to mandate folks to be trained before the start of school. So we are like-minded in that thinking, and we are doing everything that we can to train staff before the start of school. Even though our staff gets trained before the students arrive, we are looking at a 2-week window where we can start the training for staff to get as much training as we possibly can. There is an ask, and we're putting together, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, with teaching and learning as well, the Office of Wellness, where we are preparing a week-long deck for teachers and staff before the start of school.
To clarify, Mark, school safety agents will not be involved in any temperature taking. Is that correct?
That is not correct. As it stands right now, we're still up in the air as it relates to who will actually perform the temperature check function. We are working with their respective unions to find out which title will actually do the actual temperature screening. It will not be done by a school nurse. right? Because where we have a school nurse, that's one nurse for every student. It has got to be a title that's flexible. So we are still working that out. We're also finalizing what types of device will be used to conduct temperature screening, right? Some hospitals, you walk in, they have the posted on the wall. Some are done physically, and others are done through an app. So we're still working that out. I don't want to rule out school safety because that has been a title considered to do the screening, such as the case that they do now in some of our DOE buildings.
There's a question regarding thermal cameras at school entrances that monitor for fever. So I know that Mr. Rampersad, you oversee security. I'm not sure if you can address this particular question around thermal cameras.
It's exactly what I was talking about when I said that we are considering all options. Currently, we are weighing what the cost would be for those cameras for every school. And as you know, schools with large enrollments, we are asking them to have multiple points of entries to avoid any opportunity for bottlenecking to get into the school. So we're looking at what that would cost for all of our schools and the feasibility of having them installed before school commence. So we are weighing all options. We should have an answer relatively shortly.
And we are going to forward any other questions that we receive on a more local level to our Borough Safety Director, who is Alvis Brown, and also part of Mark Rampersad's office. So I want to welcome another central expert who is very valuable to us here in Queens, and his name is Christopher Mangero, and he can address some of the facilities questions that you have about your buildings, as well as space planning. So thank you very much, Chris, for being here today.
I want to start off by just introducing myself. My name is Christopher Mangero. I'm the Director of Space Planning within the Division of Space Management. I am the Chancellor's designee in Queens for all space-related issues. I just want to point out in my title, I'm not a member of director. I'm not a director or a member of DSF, which is Division of School Facilities. I will speak to some of those things, but if I don't have any answers, I can't address or don't have specific granular information, I'll make sure that I get that back to you guys as quickly as I can with your colleagues. So I really want to appreciate the superintendency for creating a platform like this. I think these are helpful for us here at Central as well. So it goes both ways, and kind of hearing back, getting some feedback from you folks. I did receive some questions, but before that, I just want to talk a little bit about the layered approach that we're taking from a facilities perspective and how we want to be able to keep and ensure the safety of your kids. Obviously, safety has always been the most paramount thing that we've always dealt with. That's our main core job on a daily basis, is to make sure that we receive and return your children back to you in a safe way. So I want to talk specifically about some of the things I was asked to speak about today, which is the ventilation, the cleaning, and kind of how we're working the space within the buildings. But I can't do that without talking about this layered approach. So first off, every campus is going to have a building-wide plan. That goes for our co-located buildings as well. So it's not just a school level, but it's really a campus level approach to how we're looking at the safety as it relates to the facility. It goes for the entry, the exit, the flow, the circulation throughout the building. Mark mentioned temperature checking. We're doing all sorts of social distancing, including hand washing. We have sanitizer pumps provided in every classroom. We're going to have PPE, and we could talk a little bit more about that. We're going to be doing nightly, much more deep cleaning, which I'll talk about a little more. And then the ventilation enhancements that we're doing is also another piece of it. So I'll talk about those three things I mentioned at the end in a little bit more detail, and then I'll bring it back to the group. So ventilation, the Division of School Facilities is really the agency that's in charge of our custodians. Our custodians are boots on the ground in terms of the facilities workforce that we have that live and operate at the building on a daily basis. DSF has conducted a survey of all buildings. We're working closely and aggressively with all of our partners, with the School Construction Authority and other partners, agency partners that we have at our disposal, to make sure that all ventilation systems are appropriately checked, manned, cleaned, modified, maintained, and will be ready for September. We're focusing on fresh air. We're focusing on filtration and exhaust, and we're focusing on windows to make sure that we get fresh air into the building. So far, principals, they relay the information if there are concerns about the ventilation. If we have legacy issues or historical issues with the building, those are, again, are being treated with a little bit more regard and respect in terms of doing a more formal investigation to make sure that we're addressing those ventilation systems thoroughly, and again, ensuring that they're appropriately functioning and working. Another note on the ventilation that I would add is by the overall scheme of what we're doing in terms of bringing in fewer children to the building, it takes some of the burden and some of the burden off of the ventilation system. So for the ventilation systems that have 100% rated occupancy, we're putting far fewer kids in those spaces, and we feel good about if we have those systems, if all those fans are working, if all those dampers are open, if all those systems are operating, we feel comfortable and confident that we'll have far more fresh air per pupil than we've had in the past. So I can answer more questions about ventilation. I know ventilation is some of the top of the questions that we're receiving from principals and parents and other stakeholders. Cleaning, I'll speak really quickly to the cleaning. We're doing nightly, daily, throughout the day cleaning. We have changed greatly from how we approached cleaning in the past. We're doing a lot more of it. We're doing that by stocking our buildings with disinfectants, making sure that we have sanitizer pumps in every single classroom, making sure that all of our sinks are operating and there's soap available for increased hand washing, which we will be preaching to adults and students alike. We have electrostatic disinfectant machines. And not to go too much into the science of it, but these are electrostatically charged mist that we apply to the surfaces. It fully coats the surfaces and it envelops all the different objects for just a more deeper cleaning. These are all things that we are layering in as safety precautions for our kids. And we can speak more about them if you have any questions regarding those things. Other question that was asked prior to me being invited to this is regards to how we approach the amount of kids in rooms and what our take is on dividers. Or some kind of separation barriers. The Office of District Planning, in partnership with my office and other stakeholders, including the Department of Health and other doctors that we brought in to help think us through what this would look like and how we socially distance indoors. We came up with providing ranges, what we felt like was safe ranges that allowed us to socially distance within rooms. We provide those ranges to the principals, and we're evaluating each classroom as part of the modality selection and part of how each campus is going through, how they can bring back kids to their buildings. They're going through and they're making determinations on how they can appropriately social distance. And again, we're trying to follow all CDC guidance on how we appropriately social distance within space. So the amount of kids we put in each room will vary from school to school. It will vary from space to space. There are many unique things in rooms. It's not as simple as saying X amount of square feet per child. We're going a step further, and we're really trying to evaluate each space, make on-the-ground decisions, trying to help principals think through how we can be most effective along those lines. In terms of dividers, we're referring to those as wellness barriers. We're going to provide a handful of those for our point of entry areas in the building. That's going to be at the safety desk, in the general office, principal's office. The idea here is that one other protection or added layer of protection that we'll have is people coming into the building. We'll make sure come in and we're trying to do as much by appointment as possible. Folks who are coming to the building unannounced, there'll be some potentially waiting outside or waiting in the lobby. We'll only have very few people, and then these wellness barriers are to protect staff and to protect folks. But there will be a protocol, there will be a process. That process will be developed at each building, and it will be followed on a daily basis. I'm appreciative that I had the opportunity to speak to everyone today. I'm happy to answer questions and stick around for as long as I need to.
Thank you, Mr. Mangero. We actually do have a few questions in the chat from some of our parents. There are two questions regarding the HVAC units. What happens if they stop working in a classroom or in a school? If something goes wrong with the vent system, will the facility be closed until further notice?
Very good question. We're trying to build redundancies. We're trying to make sure that our ventilation systems are as healthy as they possibly can be to avoid that situation. If that situation does arise at the Division of School Facilities, there is a policy in place. Different buildings are different, and the systems that provide the ventilation for them vary. So if a window or a fan is discovered to be offline for any reason, I think that we would potentially move that room, or we would move that space, or we would rework our space in the building. Many buildings don't have one unit that effectually vents the entire building, but that would be like a granular decision that we would make at that building. And we're in the place right now where we feel like that will be an anomaly. That will be a handful of buildings that might happen to throughout the course of the year. But we will aggressively repair that thing as to not lose capacity, not lose space, and not have more time where our children are in our buildings. So we will, do the best we can to address those kinds of issues as quickly as we possibly can be. And again, we're going to apply common sense, and we're going to make decisions that keep our kids as safe as we possibly can. Again, with all these layered approaches to safety that we're rolling out right now.
One more question: will all schools have air conditioners?
That is no. I think, if I'm being frank, listening to the doctors and listening to the different agencies that we've been working with and partnering for how we're planning on keeping our kids' safety, there's the question of being comfortable, and there's a question of protecting our kids from potential COVID transmissions. If fresh air here is what we're focused on. We are in the midst of an AC for All initiative. We did not achieve 100% cooling for all of our classrooms. It's frustrating, trust me, as a director of facilities here. We were making tremendous progress here. It's absolutely our goal to get there. I'm happy to say that we've started in some of our, even in some of our District 27 buildings, we've started as recently as this week as getting those programs back in line. However, there are 700 plus jobs out there across our city right now for AC. They're in varying states and statuses. We are not going to have all of our rooms AC'd, unfortunately, but again, fresh air is our focus, and we will do everything we can to make sure that we have fresh air in the classroom. But not every room will have AC, but we're working towards that.
Thank you, Chris, once again for joining us, and thank you again for answering the questions in advance. And at this time, we want to welcome Mr. John Rizzo, who can answer questions regarding school food.
Everyone, I'm one of the supervisors for District 27's food service. Narissa Barito is the other supervisor, but she is on vacation. So the Office of Food Services, we've been providing meals since March 16th to the students and anyone who needs one, adults. And we will continue providing the food service with grab-and-go meals from right now we have 21 locations. We'll be continuing this straight through until September 9th. On September 10th, we will be switching gears. Our new focus will be providing meals for the students attending school in person as well as remotely. All the menus have been created citywide and are available online. We will begin offering grab-and-go meals for the students attending schools, as well as have meals located at the entrance for students doing remote learning from home. Breakfast and lunch will likely be served in classrooms to support social distancing and minimize interaction between groups of the students. If the cafeteria must be used, schools must maintain appropriate physical distancing. Providing meals and snacks, students will be directed not to share food or beverages. Grab-and-go meals will be available for breakfast and lunch each day. Those students will be permitted to bring their own lunch if preferred. The grab-and-go breakfast will be distributed from the entrance or entrances of the principal's choosing. If student does not want a meal, they do not have to take one. Food services will deliver meals where relevant to classrooms from 3K through kindergarten. Lunch, the grab-and-go meals, again, will be delivered from the classrooms for 3K through kindergarten. For the grades 1 through 12, grab-and-go meals will be distributed from a point or points chosen by the principal. After-school meals will be readily available for any after-school programs your school will be hosting. As usual, the program director is responsible for requesting these meals through our headquarters. The only change for September is that there will not be any hot supper option. For the schools we have, Success Academy and Challenge Prep, they are going to begin remote learning on August 24th. Food service staff will be at the entrance determined by the principal to provide meals for those students. If there's a school closer to their house, they can obtain meals there. All the food service managers from District 27, they're reaching out to their respective principals with questions that they need to know, like where the grab-and-go station should be set up and the amount of students we should expect to feed.
Be allowed to bring their own lunches from home.
Yes.
Okay, will children be isolated in a room to eat individually, or will the class eat together where everyone will need to remove the mask?
So the plan right now is to have the students that are socially distanced already in the classroom to eat in the classroom, as opposed to filling up the cafeteria with hundreds of students.
Other question will be, what will a grab-and-go lunch look like?
Menus are online, and it's variation of wraps and sandwiches, and everything is cold. And we would have, certain schools do not, due to allergies, they don't want any peanut butter and jelly. But other schools will have cheese sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, as well as the cold sandwiches or wraps, grab-and-go salads.
Will there be any hot meals served?
Only for the life programs, for the babies located in Far Rock High School and Beach Channel High School, only for those programs, or if there are special ed puree meals. Other than that, everything is cold, express, grab-and-go, bagged breakfast and lunch.
Will the children have a choice for the grab-and-go meals? Or is
Yes.
it just one meal for the entire school?
No, we'll have alternatives because of the allergies and children's preferences. So the hope is that the principal will designate a grab-and-go location for the students to come through, grab their meal, whichever they prefer, and go back to the classroom. If the grab-and-go station can be in the kitchen, like through the cafeteria, that would be helpful. Everyone, all the refrigeration units and milk chests, they're all there to provide more choices. If we're doing grab-and-go stations in remote locations in the building, it's going to be much more difficult to offer the choices.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo. There's one question that just came through, which says, can the kids make their meal choice ahead of time?
The menus are available and they'll be posted in every classroom. So let's just say on September 17th, it's assorted chicken wraps with chickpeas, and a student knows they don't want a chicken wrap and they know they want a cheese sandwich instead. The student would know and can discuss with the parents ahead of time. We will have in the kitchen, we'll have alternatives.
And also the menus, did you say are already posted on the website, or are they still forthcoming so we can send them to our parents who came today?
They are posted and parents can look at them. Schools can print them out. We have them because the managers have already began ordering the food for the students.
You said that students who have chosen the full remote model, they can pick up a lunch or breakfast at a site closest to their house, right?
Yes. So if you live by 42 but attend school at 43, you don't have to trek all the way down there. You can just walk over to 42 and grab a meal set up by the entrance.
Yes, and the menu is usually posted, I believe, outside of the school cafeteria. We'll put it on our website as well, and we're going to ask our principals to make sure that the menus are circulated. Thank you so much, Mr. Rizzo. At this time, we're going to introduce our Health Services Director from Queens South.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to say that my primary responsibility as the Health Services Director is 504 accommodations, immunizations, and supporting the school community. So again, my role is to support 504 coordinators in ensuring that students are available to access DOE programs and activities via a paraprofessional, and immunizations to ensure that all students are and schools are 100% compliant and adhering to the New York State public health law in regards to all students must be immunized to attend school.
Question that says, what about schools that do not have a full-time nurse?
Okay, great. So our guidance has been that the Department of Health is currently working on making those assignments. And as I was listening to the speakers, the mayor has just announced that certified nurses will be at every school.
The information in regards to schools that have nurses, and when the nurse is out sick, are substitutes sent for that particular nurse?
Okay, I can answer that question. So we attend biweekly meetings, and we have been informed by the Department of Health that there will be replacements. The Department of Health, the Department of Ed are going to also use health and hospital corporation nurses. So they are prepared if a nurse has to take vacation, is sick, unable to reach the school, they will have substitutes.
And as Ms. Richards gets more information, she'll also communicate with us, and we'll also communicate with the other directors and central partners. So we want to thank Ms. Richards for being here and addressing some of the questions. So thank you. And
You're
again,
welcome.
I would encourage parents, if you have questions about your school nurse, to share them with your parent coordinator and your principal so that we can get on the forefront of any schools that are experiencing any issues forthcoming. And those we can also escalate to the borough office and Ms. Richards. So at this time, we're going to introduce our next guest. And we have here, this is just a snapshot of just guidance around wearing masks appropriately in schools.
Yeah.
Galvez is the director for English language learners, and he can talk about English as a new language and how that will look like in a blended learning and a remote learning way. And he also has some resources for you as family members.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Good morning, parents. Good morning, principals, APs, Superintendent Carrie-Ann Ambert and her team. As mentioned, my name is Pierre Galvez. I'm the director for English language learners, multilingual learners in Queens South, serving districts 27, 28, 29, kindergarten to high school. So just a few information in terms of ESL moving forward. So right now, each building had to submit a language allocation policy that is currently being reviewed by myself and members of my team. In that school policy, schools had to identify ways in which they will be supporting English language learners through blended learning as well as brick and mortar learning, their intake process, their services, and also ways in which that they're going to continue to ensure that English language learners get their appropriate and mandated services. This upcoming school year, our English language learners will be served according to their 2019-2020 level of English proficiency. All English language learners who receive or will receive continued services parents will receive a continued entitlement letter. So if your kids are getting ESL service and they are still eligible for that ESL service, you will get a continued entitlement letter. If they're no longer entitled to that service because they're and it's more for high schools that they graduated out, you will also get that letter of support. ENL supports will follow Commissioner's Regulations Part 154 during in-person or hybrid or blended learning, meaning that we are governed by federal and state mandates from the state. So ESL services, again, will continue and that your children will continue to receive those services. We're working to ensure that all schools in Queens South, especially within District 27, have a highly qualified and certified ENL teacher. We just finished working with our building leaders, our budget directors in Queens South, and our partners at the central office to ensure that we do have ESL teachers, bilingual teachers, to be able to serve and give the mandates as mentioned earlier. We are still waiting on guidance from the New York State Department of Education about the form of assessment and the type of language battery assessment that we will be using this upcoming school year. As some of you may know, we normally rely on the NYSESLAT as a gauge for our English language learners. Right now, the state has not given us any type of guidance in terms of when are we going to give the NYSESLAT, if we're giving the NYSESLAT this upcoming school year. And as soon as that information is shared, we will be sharing that information with Superintendent Carrie-Ann Ambert and also with our parent coordinators and our district family coordinators and directors as well.
Thank you again, Mr. Galvez. This time, I want to welcome our Administrator for Special Education for District 27, and that's Desiree Carrington from the Borough Office. Thank you so much, Desiree, for being here.
Everyone, my name is Desiree Carrington, and I am pleased to serve the District 27 community as an Administrator of Special Education. My primary role is to offer both the school buildings and families insurance that the students with disabilities are provided with the resources and services mandated on their IEP documents. Today, I will spend a few minutes covering concerns pertaining to reopening of school for students with disabilities for the 2020-2021 school year. Every student with disability will receive a new remote learning plan in the beginning of the school year. This new document will be utilized by teachers and service providers as a guidance document to meet the individual needs of students with disabilities during this remote blended learning period. I have been informed that all District 27 schools have met with parents regarding which learning model they will be utilizing. Ensure that you begin to have conversations with your child surrounding what this school year will look like for them. Ensure to include the frequency that they will be in the building if you have elected for blended learning, or if you will have them 100% remote. Ensure that you have explained that to them as well. Also, have them practice wearing a mask for a long period of time to get them acclimated to how that will feel if they are going into the school building on certain days. Related services provisions. If your child receives speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, counseling, hearing services, or any other related service, a new teletherapy consent form will be required for parents and guardians to complete. In addition, new prescriptions will still be required this school year on the expiration date. Whether you have chosen remote or in-person instruction, service providers will make every effort to service students that will be doing in person on the days that they will be in the school building. We are working to ensure that these systems are in place as soon as possible. However, I will ask a favor from each parent and guardian to kindly be patient. Blended learning is new to you as well as the providers and teachers. They are working, once they return, let me just say that, once they return, they will be working as hard as possible to ensure that the schedules that they create for the students coordinate with the days that the students will be in the building. If you need answers to questions or have concerns, your first point of contact will be the parent coordinator within your building. Kindly contact them. If necessary, then you can move forward to speak with the special education liaison. If necessary, the AP of special education, the principal, or the BCO, Borough Citywide Office, or your district. Thank you.
Related services be provided to students in the blended setting without them missing the limited in-person instructional time?
That is a great question. And at this time, how I will be able to answer that question is that the providers will do their best to not take the students away from their core curricular subjects. But as we know, time is shortened. There's limited movement throughout the building. There possibly may be an overlap into the time when the student is in the instruction. If the parent has a concern and doesn't want the child to be removed from the time when they are in the building, then that parent can coordinate with the service provider for the child to be grouped in a remote grouping for the days that the child may not be in the actual brick and mortar.
Whatever reason the full service is not provided, will an RSA be issued?
I would need a little bit more for me to answer that question, because if a service provider is working with the child, they are supposed to work with the child for the duration of the period. There should not be a time when a service provider only works with the child for half of the time. That should never happen. If it does happen, inform the parent coordinator and go through the channels of the special ed liaison, the AP of special education, and so forth. RSA is a related services authorization that is given to parents when the Department of Education cannot provide a specialist to actually provide the services to the child, whether it be remote or in person.
Are IEP learning plans going to be modified this year? In the spring, my son was supposed to get OT twice a week, and due to remote learning, his IEP was modified to only once a week.
Learning plans are not put in place to modify a child's IEP. An IEP document is an IEP document. The remote learning plan is to give an overview of what the service will look like in the remote setting. It is not to change the mandate of the service.
At this time, families, we're going to discuss a little bit more about blended learning and also how it aligns to our plans for the 2020-2021 school year. So we're going to share, again, this is our district vision and mission statement, which focuses on our acronym SCOOP: self-regulation, student agency, communication, collaboration, engagement and empathy, work habits, organization, and persistence and perseverance, which is aligned to the Chancellor's priorities. And these priorities have lived from brick and mortar before March into our remote learning timeframe. And we just want to say that we've learned a lot from that time period, from March through June. We were asked to come up with remote learning curricula right, in the span of a few days to 1 week. And we have to say that our principals and their teams have learned a lot from feedback and also from our own observations around the instruction that was taking place. So this is our district theory of action and our district priorities, which also center again around the chancellor's priorities. We've shared for you our District 27 impact video from this previous school year, and also some of the highlights from remote learning and some of what we do behind the scenes with your principals, your assistant principals, and parent coordinators, because a lot of times when we're asked to speak at events, we don't really get to share the work that the district team does. And while you hear from the chancellor and you hear from your school, you don't necessarily hear from the district team. What we do is we definitely try to bridge all of the gaps and try to support our principals with guidance that's coming from Central. And we also try to support your principals and their teams when they do need to escalate items to Central. So please view the video when you have a chance. With the key elements of the instructional principles that have been devised for this upcoming school year, the chancellor is focusing on these 4 tenets. Again, knowing students well, integrating academic and social emotional learning, ensuring the continuity of learning, and focusing on priority learning. So as you know, every school was tasked to complete a individual school plan that is going to be submitted to the state by this Friday. And each school had to discuss what their continuity of learning plan will look like. So student learning, again, as the chancellor has shared, is around safe, strong, and supportive learning. A lot of you have posted questions around when will learning take place, how many days. So it depends on the model that your school has selected, but learning takes place 5 days regardless of the model selected, so whether it's blended learning or whether it's through a fully remote model. So if a student is going to school in person for 2 to 3 days per week, which is a blended model, and then the remainder of the days of that week are remote, they're still learning 5 days for that week. 100% remote will also include live interaction with their teachers through video, assignments, emails, projects, and work that's also to be completed independently. And we'll talk a little bit more about synchronous and asynchronous teaching. The majority of students in District 27, about 74%, will be learning through a blended learning model where in-person instruction takes place 2 to 3 times per week, and then the rest will be remote. And the schools that have selected the program model across the district, we have a graph here for you that shares all of the different schools and the corresponding program model that they have chosen. By now, as shared, you should have already engaged in a family meeting with your school principal, parent coordinator, and also your school leadership team counterparts should also be giving you updated information as it comes about your school. That's why we have shared our parent coordinator listing and our principal listing, because we want to make sure that there is ongoing engagement and that your questions are being shared. If you are unable to contact your parent coordinator or your principal for any reason, please reach out to my office, district27@schools.nyc.gov, because again, we are going to respond to you as soon as possible, and we're going to get you the answers that you're looking for. School-specific questions, however, we'd have to go back to the parent coordinator and the principal, as we have over 50 schools, 55 sites in District 27. So I'm going to introduce now my teacher development evaluation coach for our district, Megan Gitley, who's going to talk a little bit more about what is blended learning and how does the DOE define blended learning.
So here you'll see the instructional leadership framework. The instructional leadership framework helps schools to plan, organize, and streamline their work to ensure that all of our students receive rigorous instruction. We will continue to implement the instructional leadership framework, knowing every student well, strengthening core instruction, and using a shared and inclusive curriculum through the blended learning platform. Blended learning is a blend of face-to-face and online learning. Students will learn part of the time in person at school and continue their learning at home on the remaining weekdays when they are not in person in the school building. The DOE defines blended learning as the use of technology to maximize face-to-face and online instruction by providing teachers the opportunity to deliver instruction in a consistent manner. Blended learning uses a digital learning platform to capture data used to inform instruction and allows students to consume instruction in a self-paced way. This year, schools will use the priority learning standards to guide blended learning and remote learning instruction. The priority learning standards focus on the most important content and key learning standards from the next generation learning standards for each grade level. During the 2020-2021 school year, schools will be continuing to build their capacity around the next generation learning standards, with full implementation taking place next school year, 2021-2022. The first next generation learning standards state assessment will not take place until spring 2022. For our ELA priority learning standards for grades K to 2, there is a focus on the foundational literacy skills. As we move through the grades 3 through 8, there is a focus on citing evidence, inferencing, drawing conclusions, evaluating information presented in diverse formats. Students will engage in and produce informative, argumentative, and narrative styles of writing. I'm now going to turn it over to our Deputy Superintendent, Melissa Compson.
Morning, and thank you so much. My name is Melissa Compson, and I'm one of the District 27 Deputy Superintendents. I will briefly describe the math priority standards. In mathematics, the priority learning standards also focus on the most important content and key learning standards from the next generation learning standards. For grades K through 5, there's a focus on algebraic thinking, base 10 operations, geometry, and data. As students move through middle school, they will focus on ratios, equations, and functions. The standards will gradually build upon each other as the students move through each grade level. If you'd like more information on the next generation standards, we've provided a resource for you. To move to the next slide, which is about synchronous and asynchronous teaching and learning. So I know there are questions about how the teaching and learning of these priority standards will look for students. There are 2 strategies for teaching and learning in a blended environment. So first is the synchronous teaching and learning. Here, instruction and learning will occur at the same time. The teacher and the students can interact. Some examples of this are live conferences, teleconferences, and live streaming. The second strategy is asynchronous teaching. In asynchronous, the instruction and the learning does not occur at the same time. The teacher and the students are not interacting in real time. Some examples of this might be emails, digital assignments, or videos. Students would then have the freedom, for example, to view a recording of the lesson multiple times. Schools are working on ensuring that all students receive both synchronous and asynchronous opportunities daily. We're now going to watch a short video of an example of synchronous teaching from Principal Mary Keegan at PS 146. So thank you, Principal Keegan. This video showcases one of their best practices called Socratic Seminars. And in this video, you can see how Principal Keegan and her staff have adapted this best practice to virtual synchronous teaching and learning, where the teacher and students can interact.
Would you consider the 5 points a neighborhood or a slum? I like to focus on using evidence from the documents that you should have in front of you. I put them up there. We went over our last meeting. I also like you to focus on not forgetting those accountable talk phrases that we use so well in Socratic Seminars. I agree with you. I disagree with you. I understand what you're saying. To build off what Chloe said, whatever it might be.
5 Points neighborhood was definitely considered a slum because in the Irish riots, like that photo, you see how there's a lot of violence going on in that photo, which would, I guess, demonstrate crime. A lot of crime would happen in that, I guess, slum. And also in like the documents that we read, I think yesterday or the day before that, how they described the 5 points. They basically said that how the people were really drunk and how the houses were falling apart and really old. So
I would like to add on. I agree with Abby. And then from the, it was Dickens visits from the 5 points, and it states hideous tenements, which means disgusting departments. So it shows like how the apartments were not well kept. And also it states which take the name from robbery and murder. So it shows that how the place like really didn't look good and the people weren't good either.
Is this cartoon necessarily what really happened on that day?
Not really like I wasn't. Oh, I guess it was biased towards like how the Irish was like beating the police. So I guess like it was from the police's point of view, I guess, because it's making the Irish seem bad.
We want to thank Principal Keegan and her students and staff for sharing this synchronous Socratic seminar today so that we could all experience what this type of blended learning might look like. You can see the interaction between the teacher and the students and between the students. So thank you very much, Principal Keegan. I would now like to introduce Susan Satani, the District 27 Director of Early Childhood, for an early childhood update.
My main role is to run the 6 pre-K centers and support the district schools. So I'm going to give an overview of the early childhood. I don't have the specifics for each district school. That would be, you would have to ask the principals for that. But I just want to go over an overview of, after speaking to many parents that are entering 3K for the first time and pre-K, a lot of them had fears of accepting seats. And I just want the families to know that they can still go on My Schools to go onto the wait list. And my recommendation to them were to go full remote, but to at least save a seat for when you feel comfortable to enter back, to enter into a building. So I just want families to know that 3K and pre-K, you can still be added to the wait list. The other thing is that only for 3K and pre-K, parents are allowed in the buildings for the first month, which is different from the other grades. And we all know for the factor of the social and emotional, the separation, the anxiety, and the schools are well equipped to deal with that. They have embedded social emotional learning programs into their curriculum, especially for this, for our youngest learners. So I just want everyone to at least be at ease with that the parents are still allowed in. We're allowing 1 parent at this time. And in order to minimize interaction in the building, the recommendation is to stagger the schedule. 8:30 to 8:40, 8:40 to 8:50 as an example. The other guidance on the first few days in the building is another staggered schedule, which allows, usually the first day is 1 hour with the parent. And then that schedule is forthcoming as well, but I just want to give you an example that the first day is usually an hour with the parent. Moving forward might be 2.5 hours with just the child, but that schedule is still forthcoming and will be coming from your schools. I have provided links here. One is a sample schedule. If you were model 1A, what blended learning would look like for your child, as opposed to full-time learning. So that link will show you exactly, I believe it's hour by hour, minute by minute of what will be occurring. The flow of the day is also there that they have provided guidance on, that also shows you how many minutes, what will occur with the hand washing, what will occur with the transitions. So it just gives you an idea of what the days will look like for the 3K and the pre-K. And rest assured that safety is a #1 priority, especially for September. I know a lot of the curriculums have been a little modified just to go over social distancing, the hand washing, the mask wearing. So the schools in District 27 are well equipped and prepared for our earliest learners. Thank you.
My name is David Norman, Deputy Superintendent for District 27. So if you look at the slide, you see a chart. Superintendent Karen Ambert mentioned that 26% of District 27 parents have selected full remote learning. That means that 74% of them selected either hybrid or blended model. So The remote learning will be revamped to include parent feedback from the launch of remote learning in the spring. Individual schools are developing plans to address student learning gaps. Our school leaders, and they recognize the importance of strengthening remote learning to ensure rigorous instruction. Please reach out to your child's school. The contact person would be the parent coordinator, your child's teacher, or the principal. The chancellor has given flexibility around when instruction will take place. That means that the answers that a lot of people have been asking questions in the chat about remote learning, really those answers rest at the school level. So there's specific school data that was used to create the remote learning plan. And based on that remote learning plan, will determine how remote learning will look in your child's school. Trauma-informed care and pedagogy. The New York City Department of Education recognizes the need to address the social and emotional health and well-being of students, staff, and families. The DOE will address the social emotional impact of COVID-19 through a targeted multi-part professional learning series. School staff have received ongoing training on being trauma-informed and integrating it into our curriculum. You will hear more about trauma-informed pedagogy from your child's school.
So I will briefly speak about physical education. Physical education and movement is extremely important for our students. Schools must still meet the New York State phys ed requirements. In blended learning and remote instruction, phys ed might look different, and of course we will be keeping in mind the health and safety precautions. Physical education may occur in open spaces that are well ventilated, indoor and outdoor. Outdoor spaces are strongly recommended for students when possible. The phys ed requirements are linked to this slide as well. So similarly to phys ed, arts instruction must ensure every student meets the New York State instructional requirements, and those are also linked on this slide. There are many considerations for blended learning. The arts instruction spaces might be a studio when possible in the schools or push into classrooms. Arts teachers programs will be a mix of in-person and remote instruction.
Our grading policy, as in spring 2020, the Department of Ed will issue grading policy guidance that's responsive to the needs of the school communities during remote learning. However, additional guidance about the 2021 grading policy is forthcoming. Schools will continue to base promotion decisions on a holistic view of students' body of work during the remote learning period, and additional guidance on the 2021 promotional process is forthcoming. Assessments. School-based formative assessments will continue. We have included a link for more information on assessment information, and that is forthcoming as well. Information relating to the New York State assessments will be provided. At this time, I'm going to pass it to Thomas Fox, our field support liaison for District 27.
After school and extracurricular activities are for the most part school-based decisions. So if you're questioning whether after school or extracurricular activities will continue at your school, I would suggest that you have that conversation with your principal in consultation with your SLT. If after school and extracurricular activities do continue, the department has provided some COVID-19 related requirements that every school must meet. If a school is offering after school activities or extracurricular activities, any person attending that activity at their school will be limited to the students who are in school on that particular day. Meaning if your student is part of cohort A, if cohort A is in attendance on that day, that student can attend the extracurricular or after school activities. Schools should keep students in the same groupings during the day and in after school programming. For instance, by age, by class, by cohort. Whenever possible, schools should work to offer remote opportunities for any student that is not in attendance on that particular day. After-hour dismissal procedures should align with the school's day procedures for dismissal. If a student feels unwell or feels sick, the same protocols that are used during the day will be used during after school, i.e., that student will be placed in an isolation room and the parent will be contacted. After school program staff who work at a location other than the school where the activity takes place will be required to follow daily entry protocols at that attending school. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Teresa Cantante, and I'm the Family Support Coordinator for District 27. I'm going to give you a little information about the admissions in middle school and high school process. As parents are already aware, we do use the My Schools website to apply for all of our application years. That normally includes your 3K, your pre-K, your kindergarten, middle school, and high school. And digitally accessible edition of the high schools and special ed high schools admission guide is online on the My Schools website, as well as with the My Schools directory. And all those links have been linked to these slides and are also available on our website.
I will briefly address transportation. So busing and transportation present unique challenges in New York City. However, to the extent possible, the Department of Education will provide transportation to students with special needs and to students in temporary housing situations. Health and safety guidelines will also be followed on buses, and some examples of that would be social distancing between students who are seated on buses, wearing masks, and thorough cleaning of the buses. Updates on transportation can be seen on the family website, which is linked here. Also, if you have questions about Metro cards, please reach out to your school's parent coordinator.
Good morning, everyone. As Melissa said, my name is Joanne Ramirez. I am the Administrative Assistant to Superintendent Carrie-Ann Ambert. Here we've included for you some important links, which includes New York City's reopening plans, which you may have already seen on the news. We've also included for you our local community folder. Highlighted here, you will find the New York City's Department of Education's website with the Return to School link that is regularly updated, sometimes on a daily basis. So all information presented to you today is as of today. Information and guidance may also change, so please check DOE's website regularly because that's where you will get the most recent information. As you may have learned from spring, it is vital that your child have a New York City Schools account. It is still needed during blended and fully remote learning for New York City Schools accounts. If you don't have one or don't know how to create one, please reach out to your school's parent coordinator or principal, and they will guide you through the process. And here's the most recent information where you can find answers to some of your questions and the return to school information.
Listed here, you will see the contact information for all of our schools. As you already know, on the New York City Department of Education website, you can still search each school, which will also list their contact information, their principal, parent coordinator. But here we have actually listed it just for our district. This information lives on our district website at district27nyc.org. Here you will find your principal's name, your parent coordinator's name, and the contact email for that school, as we know that's vital information, especially during our remote learning.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you to our district team who have basically presented for you so that you can get to know what we look like. We often get all of your emails at district27@schools.nyc.gov, but you don't get to see who we are, and we want you to know that we are here for you. So you can continue to submit more questions on our community questions Google form. Again, have updated information that changes. And what we did was we included our tracker, which Joanne presented about. All of the questions and answers will be posted on the community questions tracker. Here is our website, district27nyc.org. If you go into the website, you'll see a For Families tab. And in that, we have a weekly family newsletter. In the family newsletter, we post all of the updates for families as it changes. Again, we want to point you to the DOE reopening website, which is posted here, because that's going to have the most current information. As you know, information changes on a daily basis. We have the information there so you can address members of our team on the website. Our family coordinators are Phyllis Corley and Teresa Cantante. But we encourage you to please reach out to your parent coordinator, who is the first point of contact for you at your school. And again, as Teresa shared, there was a page where we've updated the school contact information, because sometimes there's a school-facing email that you may not know about. If you have any problems reaching out to your parent coordinator or your principal during the summer, please reach out to our office at District 27 at schools.nyc.gov. And again, we will try our best to give you the most current information. We are all parents, and we understand what you're going through, and we really want to make this process as transparent as possible. So thank you so much for your time today. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.